Now it's our turn to, sorry for the words, but put our balls on the table.
Remember, kids, this is not how you play hockey. It's just ugly.
I like it.
Screw you guys. I'm going there.
You know what? I love ice cream too.
Go back to Canada, Guy Lafleur.
Game on!
Yeah, game on.
Hello, ho, 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 Merry Christmas. It's the hockey show right here on Mile High Sports. JJ Jerez, Ryan Boulding of NHL.com here to do our Christmas episode, Ryan. I'm happy to be back. Great job filling in for me last week.
Did feel like a year ago.
I loved your attempt at the hello and welcome in. It was solid because your voice doesn't tend to project that hard, so you forced it, and I appreciated it.
I had to dig deep into the cockles of my body to get it out.
Of course, I was in Florida. Right, let me tell you the quick story. I get to Florida, and there I am ready for the Board of Governors meeting, and I look at my calendar and realize I was there a week early. Shoot.
What a fool.
So I just had to enjoy a vacation and come back and miss the whole Board of Governors meeting. But Board of Governors, Board of Governors, definitely a conversation of the week we're going to get into in a second. But, of course, as we start every single show here on the Hockey Show, matinee money, a lot of hockey games going on today. I'm going with a parlay. I mean, I've been so hot on these matinee money picks this year. I'm 5-1. Let's see if I can make it 6-1 with my first parlay of the year. If you remember at the beginning of the season, Ryan, I told you my rule for the year was one pick at a time. So I'm breaking my own rule. And usually when I break my own rules, I lose at betting. But I'm giving it a shot. I'm going with the Edmonton Oilers, who face off today against the Anaheim Ducks. The New York Rangers, who face off today against the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Buffalo Sabres, who face off today against the Arizona Coyotes. I'm parlaying all three of those for a plus 235. Sticking to money lines. I don't want to get sticky and get into regulation or get into any spreads. Let's just go straight up wins for three teams that seem to be playing some good hockey. I mean, that's kind of what I feel with the whole NHL right now. Good teams are playing good hockey now, finally. The teams we saw kind of stumble out of the gate that were like, hey, what's going on, New York Rangers? What's going on? Insert other team here.
Yeah, you guy in that jersey. Where's your offense? I don't hate it. I think they all seem like locks, which means it probably won't hit because the Ducks they'll beat the Oilers. You know, Carter Hart will shut out the Rangers, and then Buffalo's winning that game. They look pretty good.
Yeah, and I always love to bet on the team that just played the Avalanche, right? Because the Avalanche kind of elevate other teams' games, and then they go on and face a weaker opponent. Not saying that the Avalanche are extra strong right now, but I still think their style of play, the way other teams get up to play the Avalanche, they always kind of carry that into their next game and kind of stomp whoever they play. So we saw Buffalo the other night. They beat the Avalanche. So, obviously their level of play is at a pretty high level right now, but Buffalo just looks like a solid team, right? We kind of anticipated this coming over the years. They've been building and rebuilding and building and rebuilding. It finally seems like Buffalo has a team they can cheer for.
They've had their ups and downs as they do every season, but I was just struck by, they got off to a lead 54 seconds in the game. We can talk about this a little bit later in the show, but they didn't let up. They just kept their foot on the gas. They really put their foot on the neck of the Avalanche for the majority of that game. It was impressive to watch them perform that way.
Indeed. Let's get into the Board of Governors conversation. That's going on in Florida, of course. That's where they sit down and, some GMs, some people with vested interests come and discuss the rules of the game, what needs to change moving forward, how the salary cap's looking. So there are a number of topics discussed. I'm going to try to hit them all. We'll see if we can. But I just want to get your opinion on each one and how you think the NHL should approach each topic. The first of which being the 84-game season. There's conversation of 2 extra games being added to the schedule. Earlier in the season, I don't know if you remember, but it was like the third or fourth Battle of Alberta that we had already. I started saying, how many Battle of Albertas are they going to try to give us? Well, they want to add these 2 games onto the end of the season to add more division rivalries, i.e. more Battles of Alberta.
Thanks a lot, NFL, and your 17-game schedule. We were just talking before the show started about how we're kind of, the Avs are on a 5-game homestand. We're kind of in the dog days of the midseason, the holidays coming up. You're wearing down. You need the team to leave town so you can get a little rest. I don't know that I like adding more games to the slate. There was also a report out there that the NHL may go back to a schedule where there's 8 division games. How many times did we see the Arizona Coyotes in
Right.
that COVID season? You're like, the Arizona Coyotes were getting mad.
Or the
Nathan
schedules of
McKinnon was
old.
throwing helmets.
Remember the schedules of old? I feel like the Avalanche would play the Vancouver Canucks every other night. It felt like back when they would not mix the schedule so much. So I'm with you.
It's weird too because you're looking for divisional rivalries, and I thought the playoff system was set up to provide divisional rivalries, but it's only based on playoff relevance right now. You try to look at who's a divisional rivalry for the Colorado Avalanche at this point in time. Like right now today, maybe the Blues if they're figuring things out. Not Nashville, Winnipeg. I thought Winnipeg played a really good game. Things are fun in the Central when Winnipeg's good. I mean, in the Pacific, Vegas, there's not a lot. There's not a lot there right now. So I get the one side of it, but the NHL is one of the few leagues where every team plays every team twice at minimum. It's not this sport where you could go years without seeing a team that's in close proximity to you. Geologically or geographically rather, or you don't see this team until like the Stanley Cup final or something. You have no idea what this team presents because you haven't faced them. I like it as is.
And I think there's something about beating a dead horse to death, or whatever the phrase is, right? You
Just
give us
beating
more,
a dead horse.
Beating a dead horse. You give us more battles of Alberta. You give us more battles of Florida. You give us more of what you think the fans want, and eventually it dies off, right? It's like, it reminds me of days of old when people used to listen to the radio for their music, right? And there'd be a number one hit song, and you'd hear it on 4 or 5 different stations playing at the exact same time. Then you would hear it again, and then you would hear it again, and you would hear it again. And then you have people calling in and say, hey, I want to hear that. I remember I used to do that. I used to call in KBPI and say, hey, I want to hear Pretty Fly for a White Guy. And then I'd hang up and I'd call the
Nice.
Peak. Hey, I want to hear Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
What a song.
So you're replaying and replaying and replaying something that you think the fans want to hear, that eventually it dies off so quick and becomes stale and sometimes a one-hit wonder in my music analogy.
It's funny you bring that up because the New York Times email today, and I don't remember the phrase exactly, but said there basically used to be like a majority culture situation where you would hear the songs that the radio wanted you to hear, and they became the cultural, tentpole songs or whatever. And now with the ubiquity of technology and streaming services, and I can watch any hockey game at any time I want these days. Like now the culture, everyone has like their individual cultures.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you brought that up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Either way, I roll my eyes and at the thought of more battles of Alberta. It's like, did you ever used to watch In Living Color way back in the day? They had a skit there of 2 guys. They would say, hated it. So I'm going to stick to that for this. So moving on, the salary cap not going to go up that much, I guess, this offseason. We were hoping that it would take about a $4 million jump. Sounds like it's not going to happen. Possibly a $1 million jump, but a lot of money still owed by the players. Can't quite raise that salary cap up just yet. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think escrow is the real issue, right? The players are required to pay into an escrow account to help make owners whole. Obviously, the pandemic and the fanless playoff situation has hurt the league. So there's some money owed there, and we're kind of staring down the barrel of a recession, and you got inflation going on, and things aren't great. So I think it took a lot of people by surprise. Even when Gary Bettman was here at the end of the year, and Bill Daly, they were talking about how they projected the salary cap to go up, and that's just not the case, it looks like.
Yeah, we're hearing that even GMs are complaining that it's hard to make a trade right now because so many teams are trying to do these cap gymnastics. You see it with the Avalanche every single day. Avalanche have reassigned Brad Hunt to the Colorado Eagles. Next morning, Avalanche have called up Brad Hunt. Just over and over.
I mean, they're going to do that anyway.
Right.
But yeah.
And that's
pinching pennies is really pinching pennies right now.
Yeah, and that way they can accrue some space. So that way, by the time the trade deadline does roll around, they have some moves that they can do where they, that they've been planning for all year. But as of right now, GMs are complaining that it's tough to make a trade happen. A lot of parity in the league too right now, right? So teams don't even know where they're going to land. A lot of teams still fighting for those playoff spots. So they aren't necessarily willing to be sellers when maybe they should be. So yeah. I guess that's all kind of
a lot of injured reserve you're going to see too with teams trying to save money.
So salary cap not going up much. I'm going to go ahead and say hated it. Digital boards is the other conversation, right? Gary Bettman coming out and saying that there was this imaginary poll done that fans are loving the digital boards and it's not taken away from the game at all. And if you're watching the digital ads, you're missing the game and paying attention to the wrong thing. Your thoughts? I thought Gary Bettman kind of stepped on his own toes there, saying, well, don't even pay attention to the digital ads. That's what's making you money, Gary Bettman. People have to pay attention to the digital ads if you want the dollars to keep coming in advertising.
I think a couple clever things are going on here. First, classic misdirection, John Cooper-esque, John Tortorella-esque. Look over here, not over here. Fans love it. I mean, they're making money off it. It's never going to change. It's here to stay. It'll get better. It's AI. Maybe that's part of the problem. I think, there was a quote that said most fans, maybe it wasn't a quote, maybe it's just kind of Twitter sentiment, which can be tricky because it seems like a majority, but really it's a vocal minority. But most people seem to say that they don't notice it unless it's not working, right? So to Gary's point, like if you are paying attention to it, I mean, unless a guy is like disappearing into the boards, it's not really much of an issue. I'm not a big fan of like the giant puck rolling down the boards when play's going on. Like I don't like the motion of some of them when the play just happens to be going in the similar direction. I find that kind of jarring. Mm-hmm. But it's no surprise to me that this is the trend. I mean, we're living in like a Blade Runner type of society anymore where ads will just be everywhere. Minority Report where they scan your eyeball and project all the ads right to you.
We made the basketball comparison recently, right?
Yeah.
Even Idiocracy, I think you can throw in there.
Ads are here to stay.
Which brings us to jersey ads, kind of the same idea. I think we can go ahead and move past that.
I mean, we've seen some teams actually, Vegas removed a shoulder patch to put an ad on. We're seeing some teams get creative with the way they do it. But, I mean, hockey is entertainment for fans, but it is a profitable business for ownership. So it's not always about you, Mr. Fan.
How about the play-in game? Now, I know already this is going to be a point of contention between us. We've already argued about this in the past, but the play-in game, kind of adding some more teams to potential playoff runs.
I don't remember if you love it or hate it.
I hate it.
You hate it.
Hated it.
You hate the whole playoff setup, though. The whole regular season rankings, all of it.
Sure, but I'm happy that 16 teams make the playoffs and 16 teams don't. You don't want more teams making the playoffs than don't. I think that just completely waters down everything.
Selfishly, I don't really want to work a longer postseason. So this was a long last one. Like, give me a couple years of no playoffs, and then maybe I'll change my mind.
the burnout is real amongst hockey media, eh? Lastly, or I guess two more. I know we're up against the clock here, Danny, so give us some forgiveness here. The high sticking rule apparently seems to be a point of conversation among the GMs because we're seeing a lot of people just barely get touched on the helmet or barely get touched on the visor and jerking their head back and getting the calls. I think it's silly for the GMs to try to backpedal on this type of penalty because where do you actually draw the line? Do you have to have blood? Do you have to get hit in the face? Where it suddenly becomes blurred.
I think it comes down to enforcement. I actually like that the officials can get together and have a conversation and that they can review a double major or, high sticking to see what the scenario is. So maybe sometimes, you get a reduced sentence. You can't get no sentence on that review, but you get a reduced sentence. I think all the time just playing in beer league, taking face-offs, like maybe sometimes I should throw my head back during the face-off and see if I can get a call that didn't exist. Like, and until that point is occurring in the sport, I don't necessarily see an issue with how it is currently.
That's very soccer of you, but that's exactly what it is at soccer, right? These guys eventually learned that they get away with this kind of stuff, so they got better at it. They got better at selling the call.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about like throwing my head up and then backflipping and laying on my face and laying there. I'm just
rolling on the ground.
The head snap, the universal sign of I was high stick, the head snap.
Yep, indeed. And then lastly, it sounds like the NHL has requested that whoever the Senators go with to buy the team, that Ryan Reynolds is a minority holder in some way or form. They love Ryan Reynolds so much. They think his celebrity can bring so much to the table that they said, whatever direction you go in, just make sure Ryan Reynolds is involved.
Like he's effectively bought part of the team already.
Yeah.
And he's just looking for help. I love it. I think having a high-profile owner like him, the man is smart too. He runs a marketing company, and
he's got a ton of businesses.
Yeah, but his marketing company specifically, like he knows how to market, and he is marketing himself into this position, and he's doing a great job of it. But the cachet it brings, like you mentioned, the celebrity, the raucousness, the humor, he could be like the Jerry Jones of the NHL, right? Like, how many NHL owners do you hear from as regularly as you do a Jerry Jones type in the NFL, or Robert Kraft, maybe,
or LeBron James being part owner of Liverpool, I think it was, right?
When seeing what Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney did with the Wrexham Football Club in Wales and the documentary, like that kind of visibility for the sport is the type of thing the NHL is looking for. They've got All or Nothings on Amazon Prime. They've got the Quest for the Cup shows. They've got the outdoor game stuff. Like, there's a lot of opportunity here, and this is someone who has had success in that realm and also opens the door to that kind of media other room.
Yeah, I
love it.
This is the one topic I'm not going to say I hated it for. I like it. I'm for it. Whatever brings more positive attention to the NHL, I'm all about it, because my favorite sport in the world, very underappreciated in society. But that'll do it for the Board of Governors. We'll get into some Avalanche conversations next. Of course, the Avalanche take on the Nashville Predators this evening at Ball Arena. Another home game here in the very long and tedious
Saturday.
Thanks for hanging out with us right here on the Hockey Show, Colorado's biggest and best live hockey radio show. JJ Jerez, Ryan Bolden, Coach Bailey behind the glass. We'll be right back. Mile High Sports.
Right now, it's 16 minutes past the big hour. Is that not right, Mr. Scream? Great, good stuff. I think people are getting really cranked.
Welcome back. It's the Hockey Show, Colorado's biggest and best live hockey radio show. We got some Avalanche to discuss. Mr. Scream is about 4 minutes off, though. Of course, we went a little long on the Board of Governors, but we might go a little long here because I really enjoy the days that we get to sit here and preview a game, and that's something unique about this year's Avalanche schedule. So many Saturday games on the calendar. We're basically doing that almost every weekend, and I enjoy it. So let's get into it. Let's talk some Avalanche hockey. You and I both up in the press box pretty often, and we were both up in the press box during that Sabres loss the other day, and kind of a telling loss just about what's going on in the team. Of course, we know the injuries are rampant, and it's tough for these guys to navigate. I think Nathan MacKinnon's absence is really proving to leave a mark on this team. I mean, the lack of excitement, the lack of spark, I think, that's coming out of the Avalanche offense right now is noticeable, and Nathan MacKinnon's absence definitely has a lot to do with that, not to mention all the other injuries, but we know the kind of play Nathan MacKinnon brings to the table. So I guess, Ryan, just your thoughts on the current state of the Avalanche. Are they in trouble? I mean, currently at a 15-11-2 record, holding on to that last wild card spot as it is. Of course, games in hand, no time to panic yet, but is this team just kind of heading down the wrong path early here in the season?
I don't think that any Jared Bednar coached team is really down and out, especially not with the talent that this team potentially has. The injuries are obviously taking a toll. There are situations that I would say at this point have become concerning, right? Bowen Byram out week to week with a lower body injury. Today, Jared Bednar confirmed it is indeed a lower body injury. There were some questions about whether or not it was a concussion scenario again. We've seen Byram around the team. We have not seen him skating. He's been week to week for a while. He hasn't played since November 4th.
Worrisome.
We're like month-to-month status here, and like I said, we haven't seen him skating. Worrisome, right? Gabe Landeskog, expecting mid-January-ish return initially, barely on the ice. Jared Bednar said a couple days ago the expectation is his conditioning isn't going to be great. He's doing everything he can off the ice, but obviously nothing can be done until he's on the ice. Concerning. Darren Helm continues to just not come over that final hump of his injury.
He was a question mark on opening night. He was like, we're not sure if he's going to play opening night yet, and here we are.
Yeah.
28 games into the season, still no Darren Helm.
Yeah, does Darren Helm make as big of an impact as Nathan MacKinnon does? No, he does not. But he does make a big impact, and part of that, again, to go back to what Jared Bednar has told us is, he likes that he has been able to use Andrew Cogliano, JT Compher, and Logan O'Connor as a consistently good checking second line, right? But he said, I would rather have them back as the fourth line and have all the rest of the pieces in place. And so you look at these things. We don't know what's going on with Nathan MacKinnon. He is not skating. The next man up looks to be Curtis McDermott, maybe. And, no disrespect to him. He's obviously a talented hockey player. He's playing at the NHL level. But I'm not sure that's the help that this team needs. And when we really talk about, is this team in trouble, my concern is the goal situation on the lineup, right? So Val Nichushkin is back in the lineup. He's getting up to speed. I finally asked Jared Bednar about the decision to just play a guy like Nichushkin versus sending him to the AHL for a conditioning stint. And, he kind of agreed that it is we need help now. Val Nichushkin hasn't played in 17 games is still potentially better than a lot of the call-ups the Avs have. No disrespect to them. A lot of them are inexperienced. The thing that struck me, though, is Nichushkin led the team in goals with 7. Missed 17 games, and was still ranked 3rd on the team in goals with 7.
Yep.
And I pulled up the goals right now. 1, 2, and 3 are Mikko Rantanen with 20, Nathan MacKinnon with 8, Arturi Lehkonen with 8. I mean, they have won enough games. They're in the mix. Things aren't dire here, but when it comes to scoring goals, I feel like things are dire. You've got one guy driving the bus, and he's got 16, 17 even strength goals. He's got a lot of even strength goals, right? Mikko, who loves to shoot from that corner, that far side on the power play.
Loves a one-timer.
Is not seeing success. The Avs power play is not seeing success. But my concerning thing is that a guy like Val Nichushkin could be 1 goal out of number 2 on the team, and he missed 17 games. And so you look at Nathan MacKinnon, he hasn't been scoring a lot of goals, but he has been driving a lot. And part of his impact on the power play at 5-on-5 is that he has to be defended. And that opens room up for a guy like Cale Makar. It opens room up for Arturi Lehkonen. It opens room up for Val Nichushkin, Mikko Rantanen, Devon Taves. I mean, it opens room up for Curtis McDermott or Jacob McDonald, anyone, because he is so dangerous. And without that danger, you're kind of stuck trying to figure it out. And so I talked to John Hines today about the Avalanche, and I said, we've seen some defensively stingy teams shut the Avalanche down recently. Is there a blueprint there for you and your team? And what he really talked about was the Avalanche transition, and when they get 3 guys high in the zone and they become really hard to defend against with their speed and stuff. And they can still do that with what they have, but the danger isn't there. And because of that, and because of a commitment to blocking that we're starting to see, I mean, the Buffalo Sabres blocked a lot of shots. Philly blocked a lot of shots. They didn't win that game, but, it was close.
If you or anyone out there has listened to the Hockey Mountain High podcast, especially early on in the season, first of all, bless your heart. Second of all, you've heard us a million times point out the 3 things that were helping the Avalanche find success early. Nathan MacKinnon, the power play,
the number 1 ranked power play in the league,
and Alexander Georgiev.
Yeah.
All 3 of those things have suddenly fallen off the map. Of course, Nathan MacKinnon, we know the injury. The power play hasn't found any success in, a handful of games. Alexander Georgiev possibly having what I think we'll look back as his roughest stretch of the season. We haven't seen a good game out of him in quite some time.
This is kind of what we thought he would start the season with, and he didn't. Mm-hmm. And it was Pavel Francouz, basically, who struggled at the start of the season. Mm-hmm. But, I think when systems are falling apart, when all of the pieces can't really get to what they need to do on time, then you start to look to the goalie to get that big save, right? We need that one big save to get us out of the period or to get us the win in that game, and we got it or we didn't get it. We hear that a lot. But you start to look at a guy and you're like, okay, he's given up 4 goals a game-ish, like he took a little stretch off so Francouz could play a couple games. And then he came back. I mean, he looked pretty good against Buffalo. He didn't look great.
Yeah.
Hard to blame him for that game.
I would not point the finger at him, but at earlier in the season, there were games where they were playing similarly in front of him, similarly bad, and he was still making the saves and getting the team out of this rut. Right now, you're not seeing it from him, and it's exactly what you mentioned. I mean, you have a handful of guys in the lineup that Jared Bednar just simply can't fully rely on, right? He's constantly adding minutes to this guy, cutting minutes from this guy because he has so many guys in there that he just can't simply trust. So I know there's an element to Jared Bednar that loves to teach, that loves to coach, that loves having these AHL guys that are just here to absorb and listen to everything he says and just work super hard. But there's also an element of needing that skill, that talent, that Val Nichushkin, just throwing him right in the lineup because you're so desperate right now for guys that you can trust to play your style. And that's really where he's at. I mean, I feel like after the losses, even after some wins, Jared Bednar's coming into that press conference perplexed, just like, what is going on? How do I reach these kids?
How do I reach these kids? And Jared called the team's effort against Buffalo sleepy. He said, we're sleeping, right? And then
namely on that Tage Thompson goal, the opener.
Even today, he said, we've been sleepy to start games. Not necessarily the 2 games they won. The Avs won in this stretch. Remember, they lost 4 in a row, 1-2. Have lost again. But someone was asked, I think maybe Bennett Durando from the Denver Post asked, how do you resolve that? Like, how do you get the team to start on time? And Jared was like,
ask those guys.
Yeah, talk to them. I can only do so much to get them prepared to play.
And it's such a common complaint out of Jared Bednar is that I didn't like our start. We came out of the gate slow with the first period.
And you hear that from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he thought the start in the 2 wins that they had was good. But I have felt on the eye test level that the Avs don't really start the game as well as they were at the start of the season. At the start of the season, I mean, how many shifts did we see where they almost scored on the first shift? An almost scored doesn't get you anywhere in hockey, but it does, set a tone for the game. Like, we are coming out as hard and fast as we can. We're almost scoring. We're feeling good. We know the chances will come. I'm starting to feel like this iteration of the Avalanche, this mixed, inexperienced and veteran squad, maybe the inexperienced guys, they're working hard, but they're going, we know the vets will get one. There's still confidence here to come back, but I almost feel like they're too confident in their ability to come back in a game. And you saw it in Buffalo. Like, Buffalo scored 2 goals in the first 7 minutes, 1 goal 54 seconds in. That game's pretty much over at that point, And Don Granato, he was like, you don't want to be chasing this team in a game like that. You really don't. In a game where you're trading chances, maybe it's easier to come back. The Avs like to play a high-tempo game. It's not a team that really shuts down, but you don't want to be chasing them. So if you shut down in the 3rd period and you have 1 shot and it goes into the empty net, that's it. And the Avs have 18 shots, only a couple go in, and you've built the lead. You built the buffer. You can come out of that.
Well, and we all know Jared Bednar's philosophies are very defense first. Take care of your responsibilities on the defensive end, and the offensive opportunities come. And maybe the AHLers kind of buy into that a little bit too heavily, right? I'm just here to make sure I'm playing my defensive role. Somebody else can possibly take care of that offense. Obviously, they want to score goals, but that's not the priority. Just don't get scored on. Try to be a +1 on the night, right? So I think the good thing is all the Avalanche fans can hang their hat on is last year they weren't too far off of this same position, right? And then suddenly they got into January, and it seemed like they simply couldn't lose. If they keep this trend of getting their players back and everybody seems to be slowly trickling back, the worst of the injury days might be over for this season, then we might be in for a pretty exciting January. And hey, here we are sitting about how we're saying how we're a little bit burnt out. The dog days are here. And at the beginning of the year, we're saying, wake me up when the playoffs come. Well, now maybe once the guys get back in the lineup, they have a little more something to play for. It's a little bit more exciting for us as they try to keep climbing up the standings and get that first spot in the Central again.
Well, I think we can talk more about this after the break, but, we've got some things to preview in tonight's game. I think we've got some lineup changes on both sides. And question about where this team, like you said, the injuries are hopefully done and you get reinforcements out of this, but there's a toll being taken on the players who are not injured. And that, I think, is a bit concerning.
Ice time. Lots of minutes out there, especially for guys like Kale, Mikko, even JT Converse seeing a really big uptick in minutes. So, yeah, we'll get into some more. I guess we'll get into more previewing and other things around the league. And, of course, we'll follow that up with our mixed bag skate. So, halfway through here on the Hockey Show, thanks for hanging out with us on a busy NHL day. There's even NFL going on. I was at home watching Spanish second division soccer because that's just the person I am. But, hey, that's what makes me great.
As the South Stands Fancast would say, sports.
Sports. Mile High Sports. Thanks for hanging out.
Let's go, Colorado!
Welcome back. The Hockey Show. getting more preview. Avalanche facing the Nashville Predators tonight. Already the second time we've seen Nashville in Ball Arena. Should have been the third time we've seen them this year. Of course, remember a couple, weeks ago already, almost a month ago, the Avalanche were supposed to be in Nashville. Black Friday, yeah. And the game got postponed because of a water line break. Craziest
water main break.
Water main.
There's like millions of gallons or something. Like the fact that they could turn around, they missed 2 games, but turn it around that quick and get it figured out is impressive. Like, I mean, imagine, I don't know if the ice was actually affected, but imagine a torrent of water spilling onto the ice in an arena. Like, that's going to do some damage.
Yeah. I'm sure the ice was affected. I mean, think about it. Pouring water over ice, even if it's a small amount, affects it in one way or another. But the last 10 games that these two teams have faced off, the Avalanche have won 7. So I'm not sure if the Nashville Predators put too much fear in Colorado's heart, but at the same time, that's a little worrisome right there because perhaps the Avalanche are saying, we know how to take care of business with these guys. Not to mention we just broke down how the Avalanche aren't necessarily at 100% right now. So I guess looking at the matchup, looking at tonight's game, what are you seeing? I know there are some lineup changes for tonight on both sides. Let's get into the game itself.
Yeah, I think, kind of first and foremost, what's the biggest change for the Avalanche, I suppose, is that JT Compher's been promoted to the top line. So he'll be playing with Lehkonen and Nichushkin, I expect, and Mikko Rantanen to move down to align with Evan Rodriguez. What's nice about this is you are trying to balance some scoring threats, which the Avalanche haven't really been able to do. Missing Evan Rodriguez was hard because it didn't give you really a 2-line threat. So that's a bonus. It also speaks to the work that JT Compher's done, moving up from effectively centering a third line, checking line, to a second line with the same group, to now moving up into the first spot. He also logged a lot of minutes at the end of, the Flyers game. He had a couple of face-offs in the D zone. He told me post-game he wished he had won those. And, I think that speaks to the responsibilities taken. It reminds me of Cale Makar a little, where the Avs could win 8-0 or 8-1, and Makar would be like, well, I blew my coverage on that one goal, so I need to be better. Compher is doing that, but my concern is, and I kind of teased this before the break, the time management that these remaining players on the vet side are having to take on, this increased workload. I mean, it could hurt in the long run. Like, wear and tear is real. I think playing an extended season and having a protracted offseason is obviously showing for the Avs. Jared Bednar talked the whole training camp about, trying to ease his guys into it and being very respectful of the workload that they were going to have given the shortened offseason. And now you're having to play guys, a lot of minutes. Can Cale Makar play all season at 28 minutes a game? Probably.
So
can JT Compher?
Am I hearing you correctly? Do you attribute what's going on with the Avalanche right now to that shortened off season, or is this just bad luck right now?
I think to a degree. I mean, you can say things are bad luck, right? I just was talking to somebody I know today who had to have a torn labrum repaired, and I was like, oh, was it an injury or just like a wear and tear thing? And he was like, nobody knows how it started. Maybe it started when I was doing this or that, and I tore it a little bit, and it kept tearing. I mean, this isn't hockey player related. It's just, somebody I know. And it just got me to thinking, though, like if something tweaked in the off season and you didn't have as much time as normal to recover, or something tweaked during the Stanley Cup final and you immediately just jumped into skating, you didn't have the rest, then the strength training, and then the skating, and then training camp, maybe these little nagging injuries turn into massive problems. Or, maybe you're just worn out and then an injury happens. You're overexhausted and then you pull a muscle, or, you tweak something the wrong way. Evan Rodriguez, we just talked to him about his injury, and I asked him, without going into specifics of what your injury was, can you tell us what happened on that play? Because it seems like every single person in the press box had a different theory.
Some people thought ankle, some people thought knee. Yep.
He didn't really say, but he did say that what happened is he clipped skates with, I forget who it was. Was it like Edmonton?
I don't remember.
Somebody was down on the ice and they clipped skates, and he, I mean, immediately had an issue. I think it's still safe to say it was probably a knee, because he said immediately he was very worried about the injury. And by the time he got back to the training room, he felt better about it, knew it wasn't going to be a long-term thing or a season-ending thing.
Sounds like a knee to me.
You generally don't have those kinds of ankle injuries. Maybe a high ankle sprain is 6 weeks in the NFL, so probably 6 weeks in the NHL. But, you know, it speaks to those things. That's a fluke thing that can happen, but, you know, why does that happen? And Evan Rodriguez obviously wasn't on this team last year, so he hasn't gone through that. Maybe that's why he comes back quicker. I don't know. I'm just saying the workload's a lot. And then on the other side of the puck, you know, you've got the Nashville Predators coming in. They've lost 5 games in a row. Some of those games have been in overtime, so the team has gotten some points. But things aren't going well for them, you know. And, I mean, a win against the Avalanche at this point could be a season-changing kind of thing for them. You know, like, okay, if we can do it against them, we can do it against anybody. And they're going through some lineup changes, too. Like, they're moving Ryan Johansson back up with Forsberg and Matt Duchene. They're moving Granlund down to potentially the third, fourth line. Cody Glass has been promoted up to the second line. Like, some things are in flux there. And they're facing an Avalanche team that's a big question mark. Like, the roster can be anything on a given day. The vets could show up or not. You know, this is really an opportunity for Nashville, I think, more than the Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, I started with the last 10 games between the two, and Avalanche have dominated in pretty much every category, but there's zero chance you can count on that tonight because just two completely different teams playing each other.
And UC Saros is a good goalie. He's the starter. I got that from coach's lips, John Hines' lips, to my ears, to my tweets, to my followers. So
we'll see what happens tonight. Going to be a good one, and no game is easy for the Avalanche right now, but we'll be right back. We'll get around the rest of the league for the mixed bag skate. Stick around, Mile High Sports. This is the Hockey Show.
I play hockey and I fornicate because those are the two most fun things in cold weather.
Welcome back.
I'm feeling it.
Segment number 4. I'm trying to let it breathe because you're digging it so much I have no idea what it even is.
Thrice.
You're going to hate me.
It's a good one.
I don't know who that is.
I'm not surprised.
Not going to lie. I don't love them. They're just screaming in my ear.
It's old Thrice. They don't sound like this anymore, unfortunately.
Do they sing more? Are they more loving? Do they sing love songs now?
Justin Kenster's got kind of an abrasive voice, like scratchy. He does a fantastic solo cover of Wrecking Ball, though.
I'd imagine his voice would be scratchy after years of screaming like that.
Yeah.
So, makes sense to me. Let's get into some things around the league. Mixed bag skate, so we'll try to go quick. We got quite a handful of topics to get into, but I want to start with Mitch Marner's point streak.
Let's do it.
Ending at 23 games. I mean,
New York Rangers. Shut them down.
Yep, and that's exactly what I said at the top of the show, right? Some of the teams that we were expecting to play well throughout the season are starting to pick it up right now. New York Rangers, one of my favorites of those group. But Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs have just been playing some really good hockey. I know you can't say that they've been flying under the radar because they are hands down the most covered team in the NHL. But I feel like it's not very talked about how good of a streak not only Mitch Marner had, but the Toronto Maple Leafs as well.
It's been blowing my mind, not just Marner's streak, but you had Jason Robertson's streak. You have Kirill Kaprizov's on a streak.
A home streak, right?
Yeah. Well, it was a streak. Now it's a home streak. But, you know, like long games, over 10, 12, 16, 23, you kind of wonder, like, what is it? What's in the water? What's in the biosteel? And, maybe it's goaltending changes. Maybe it's, I feel like we hear a lot, particularly if you listen to Jeff Merrick, talk about the incremental changes players make during the offseason to improve and how it's really hard for goalies. They don't really have an opportunity to do that. So maybe that's it. But, I mean, impressive. It feels like one of those things where Toronto really is a juggernaut. Maybe this is the year. But I feel like maybe this is the year for the last 3, 4, 5, and they just don't get it done when it matters. This team feels different. I mean, they feel a bit like the Avalanche where they're just kind of steamrolling. Nothing rattles them. They're just getting it done.
Great regular seasons, always choke in the playoffs, but I'm with you. I think there's something to be said for Mitch Marner's ability to continue the streak even after it started getting some attention, right? especially in Toronto, you're under a microscope and a spotlight. And when suddenly that pressure starts to build up, hey, keep this streak alive. Hey, kid, you're killing it. Keep going, keep going. You would think, based off their history, that he would crumble maybe around 16 games, 15 games. But no, for him to keep it alive, keep going, keep producing, and to finally end it at 23, which is a super impressive number, I think speaks to how different that team is this year.
And they're the team that stopped Jason Robertson's streak, and they shut Dallas out in that game. And Dallas, I forget the exact number, but I'm pretty sure Dallas had around 70 shot attempts through 40 minutes of that game. Like, Dallas was pouring it on, and Toronto just said no. And to be able to do that for a guy like Mitch Marner, who's obviously offensively talented, but plays in all situations, to do that, it's impressive. It speaks to some depth scoring to a degree, spreading the scoring around a little bit on that team.
On Thursday, the St. Louis Blues and the Edmonton Oilers faced off, and the game was started with a 2-minute penalty to the St. Louis Blues for icing the incorrect starting lineup that they kind of publicized before the game. Is this a stupid rule, or do you kind of like the strange hockey rules getting implemented here?
I love the strange hockey rule aspect of it, right? The lineup is set. The visiting team has to provide the lineup first so the home team can match it. And I guess it's a way of creating a little bit of fairness for the opening faceoff, right? So, the one team doesn't put out all their superstars and the other team's stuck with their fourth line necessarily or whatever. Teams tend to match, the home team tends to match up with the visiting teams.
Or John Tortorella goes and throws his goons.
Yeah. Maybe it's just to prevent a situation like that from back in the day. But it's weird to me, we had so many conversations about this in the press box when it happened, and I would really have loved to talk to Craig Berube about it. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled to be talking about it post-game. But my questions are like, how do the officials not be like, this isn't what you provided us? Are you sure this is what you want to do?
Yeah.
And how does that penalty happen? Like, the guy dropping the puck is like giggling.
He's just giggling, waiting.
Yeah, and he's like, the second the puck hits the ice, they blow the whistle, and they're like,
gotcha.
2 minutes on St. Louis. Or does St. Louis, like, after the anthems and they're getting ready, they're just like, whistle, put somebody in the box, chief, because you guys blew it.
Or
I don't know.
Maybe somebody had to run to the restroom real quick, and they had to just throw some guy out there.
Here's the other thing. It makes me wonder, like, what if warm-ups happen, coach sets the lineups, the media gets it, it's on the NHL websites, it's locked in, and then a guy is like, you know what?
I had a bad breakfast burrito.
I don't think my groin feels right. Or, I had a bad breakfast burrito. I was playing guilty, and, I'm just too tired to go, coach. What happens in a situation where it's like a potential injury or illness? Are you allowed a substitution? Is it a penalty? I don't know. This is like this whole new area. It's like you opened a door into a back room of the NHL that you didn't know existed, and you're like, what is in here?
Right, 100%. I had no idea that was an enforceable thing and punishable by 2 minutes in the box. In that same game, we saw Connor McDavid and a controversial offside call. I think it was going to be his second goal of the game, but it really had to get slowed down. It was one of those situations where at first glance you think, oh, there's nothing wrong with the play. He's not offsides. Everything's fine. You slow it down. You go frame by frame. You suddenly realize, oh, I see what they could be possibly saying here in him being offsides. When I saw the play, I don't really like it because I don't think he ever really lost possession. I feel like he was just controlling the puck exactly how he wanted to. Maybe, again, if you slow it down, you split hairs, you start looking at pixels, absolutely, you can probably find offsides on most non-calls. So that's my conversation here. Where do we draw the line? I mean, I'm getting kind of tired.
Let me ask you this.
I'm tired of slow motion offsides.
What was the initial call on the ice?
A good goal.
And then they challenged.
Right.
And see, I feel like there are often scenarios that we have seen this year just at Ball Arena where you're like, this is probably offside, but it doesn't result in a goal. The puck goes out, and you're almost like, I wish somebody had scored so we could see, because it seems to be now more than ever as close as possible, especially now that a player's foot can be in the air as long as it's over the line. So I think if you're going to allow the foot to be in the air, you almost need to keep the replay aspect of it, because that's even harder, I think, to see from an angle in real time. But I'm with you. It's kind of an all or nothing scenario. Either you you get it all, and you go frame by frame with cameras in the blue line. Maybe you implement player tracking more accurately and do something like, soccer has, where they can accurately digitally depict what's going on. Or you be like, no reviews.
I like the Jeff Merrick stance. And for years, he's been on this horse. Horse? No. He's been on this soapbox of get rid of offsides. Get rid of it entirely. I know it changes the game a lot, but I think in this faster version of the game, I don't think offsides helps. I don't think anybody's going to be cherry picking. I mean, it's obviously such an archaic rule that it was from when maybe guys were stacking 4 guys in the defensive zone and just kept one guy floating around the neutral zone, would flip the puck up, and he'd go on a breakaway 6 times in a game. I don't think that's the way hockey would be played if they removed the blue lines. And my favorite argument of all, I heard Jeff Merrick say this once, and it stuck with me so hard. If we were to invent the game today, would offsides be part of the rules?
I mean, so what about getting rid of offsides in soccer?
I hate it there too. That's even stupider offsides because it's so arbitrary because that
one
offside
makes
line moves.
Less sense to me than the hockey one. I don't want to be the guy that's like, keep it because it's always been there and that's how I feel right now. I just do think, I mean, you don't have it in roller hockey. And so people do cherry pick. And I think you would see a lot of that.
Don't you think cherry picking might cause for more breakaways, which might cause for more goals, which might cause for more excitement?
Mitch Marner just had a 23-game point streak, and scoring is up in the NHL, so I don't know that we need that. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, I just am curious where the term cherry picking comes from.
Yeah, now you got me thinking.
I don't know. I hope it's appropriate.
Before we get ourselves distracted and maybe start Googling the origins of cherry picking, Alex Ovechkin scores his 800th goal. No surprise there. We knew he was going to get there. He does it on a night where he gets a hat trick. What I liked about it was a little graphic I saw online on Twitter. He's done it against 165 different goalies, which means 800 goals on 165 different goalies. There's a handful of goalies in that pile that he's
shelled.
Yeah, he's getting double digits on.
Yeah, getting shelled. I actually saw a stat also on Twitter that said there's only 7 players in the NHL who have scored a goal against all 32 NHL teams, which, you're kind of surprised it's that low. Active players.
He's not one of them.
It's impressive what he's doing. I have recently come out and said I'm not super keen on seeing him defeat any records on a personal level, but you can't deny how impressive it is.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why I saved him for last.
I was going to say Lucas Sedlak, former Avalanche this season, signed a deal with Colorado, played in training camp, started the season, put on waivers, claimed by Philly, was just here in town, just talked to him in the locker room, asked him how things were going, if he talked to the guys here. He obviously had history with Jared Bednar in Lake Erie. He had history with John Tortorella in Columbus, has decided he wants to go home, said today he hadn't seen his fiance in the Czech Republic since he left for training camp in September. Feeling a little homesick, wants to go home and play in the Czech Republic. He's gone. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't have any opinion, really. You covered the whole thing and the whole situation, but I understand it. It's tough for these guys. It's a lot like the World Cup, right? They've been in Qatar for so long. They've been training that, there's a chance some of these guys have had babies that they haven't even met yet because they've just been stuck playing this tournament. But with that World Cup final tomorrow morning, I'm excited. That's going to be good. A good game, a good culmination to a fantastic tournament that was this year's World Cup, and I'm excited for the next one in 4 years.
We've got some breaking news out of the Winnipeg Jets. Blake Wheeler is out at least a month after undergoing groin surgery Friday from a shot that hit him in the groinal area on Thursday. We had so many questions. We talked about it, like, what is that operation like?
Right.
Where do they cut? What do they fix?
I picture the pregnant legs up, right, on those holders, just
in the stirrups,
almost spread eagle.
And then he played the third period through an injury that required surgery the next day. I mean, hockey players are beasts. Also, defenseman Nate Schmidt is out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury that he suffered on Thursday. He's cleared concussion protocol, so it's not that.
How exciting. What an exciting ending to the show.
Tough times.
And,
on Portland, Maine.
We got to wish all 6 of our listeners a Merry Christmas, and thank you for hanging out with us this year. This might even be our last episode. Did we decide what we're doing New Year's Eve? There's an Avs game that day, 5 o'clock. Toronto Maple Leafs in town.
It's an early one. I don't know. That's going to be tough.
Danny, you in town? We don't know. We'll discuss it off air. But either way, Merry Christmas to everybody. Yeah, it's been a fun ride this year. So thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back eventually. Enjoy the game tonight.
Ciao.
Bye.